Okay, finally, I have you here. I'm so happy. And we even have an update that we haven't discussed.
Exciting.
No. But everybody, welcome Dr. Catha Fisher of Spring Fertility. I'm so honored and thrilled to have you here. I feel like this has been a really long time coming. And a lot of people have lots of questions for you, so I'm going to get to those at the end, but I'm going to get to my questions first. I want to start by you just telling us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
Just like a little gist.
I am the child of physicians, so I always saw medicine as this career that was like really personally fulfilling and financially rewarding, and it just seemed like a great balance. And so I knew nothing about anything else. It was just always going to be medicine, much to the shock of my parents. And I went to college and grinded down, did pre-med, and then went to medical school. And in medical school, I didn't really know who I wanted to be when I grew up. You kind of get exposure to everything, but really hard to dig into one area. And it feels super overwhelming to have to make a choice. So how medical school works is you do that for 4 years, then you have to commit to a field and a residency with like no information other than like a 6-week like clerkship. So I really tried to dig in and lean on my parents and figure out like what I wanted to do. And I took a little bit of time to do some like women's health research. And I worked at Memorial Sloan Kettering in their breast cancer department. And it was really incredible and eye-opening and like what women can do in like careers and family and everything. And I remember most of the stories were tough. It was like 30-year-olds with breast cancer and it didn't always go great and it was really complicated and it was emotionally draining. And at the end of my kind of time there, one of the female surgeons who was a killer, had like 3 kids, exercised in the morning, like phenomenal who you want to be when you grow up, was like, come to this consult. This is going to be a good one. And I went in and it was a 32-year-old woman who had just gotten married and just beaten breast cancer. And the story was supposed to be like, this is fantastic. Right? We're at the end. Look at us. I'll never see you again. Yeah. And the first question the patient asks is, okay, so when can I get my period? When am I going to have kids? And the surgeon kind of looked at me and she realized it was going to go south really fast. And this is a female surgeon. And granted, this was a long time ago. And she took a breath and she was like, okay, well, if you haven't gotten your period, you probably won't. And that's going to be really hard. And let's try these things, but I'm not so sure it's going to work out. And the woman who had just been told that she was in remission and she was clear lost her mind and basically just screamed at the surgeon who didn't know what to do about how if she had been asked what was more important, she would have said being a mother and not beating breast cancer. Oh my God. And I remember standing there like feeling ill and thinking like, this can't be. This can't be that smart women are taking care of smart women. And we didn't like see this coming. And I actually had no concept of fertility or like, I was never the kind of woman that wanted to get married and have kids. It wasn't a part of my like ethos.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, this is so important. And so from that moment, I sort of knew who I wanted to be when I grew up. That's amazing. Just did my best to sort of like plot, not even like plan to get to like this seat. Yeah. And it's been incredible to work in like fertility, but every day is kind of like little versions of that conversation.
I know.
And weathering it is, you know, like it's important to feel it, but it's important to have distance from it. But that is like why I do what I do.
Completely. I mean, there's like, that's the purpose behind what you do. And I feel like when you're in this field, you have to have that kind of like depth of purpose for what you're doing.
I think so.
So little context here, Catha grew up with Timmy.
It's true.
And I met Catha, what was this, like a year ago now?
I feel like it was a year ago. But when I was thinking about it, it's like we had talked before, even like before we sort of really met.
So Timmy would call Catha while we were in the midst of our journey back in Los Angeles. And he would call you and you would give such sound advice and always like answer any kind of random whatever question we had. And I remember talking to you at one point and being like, I wish that I could just do it with you. Yeah. And then everything happened with our surrogate. And Timmy and I made the decision after talking to you again that like we just needed to throw all new variables into the mix. So we decided to find a new doctor, which turned out to be you. Yeah. We decided that we likely needed a new surrogate since that's the journey that we're going on. And then another round of egg retrieval. Yeah. So I met you last year and I just remember immediately walking in and seeing your face and just feeling like, thank God. Like, honestly,
oh my God,
your energy, and I can be like socially anxious and I pick up on energy. And my last doctor, his energy was wonderful, but I could tell with you there was this perfect balance of your energy and your knowledge. And I'm wondering for you, like in our first meeting when we went down this road, obviously it was surrogacy from the beginning.
Yep.
Like I knew that I didn't want to put my body through that again.
Right.
Do you remember anything from our first meeting or our first appointment, anything, and looking back now that jogs your memory?
Yeah. I mean, even before, I remember talking to you guys and feeling throughout your journey in LA that it was great to do it, but I felt so sort of broken for you that you didn't have that kind of consistency or transparency with your teams there.
Yeah.
And I think a part of fertility, no matter what the path is, it can just be so isolating and not necessarily feeling like you have a team in your corner that you can be fully transparent with or feel like they're like with you and aware of it. Makes it more complicated. And then also breeds distrust and all of these things that then become really challenging. So, and when we were talking, I was like, you don't have to come see me. I remember I was just like, you don't, this is not a part of it. It was just like, I just want you to be okay. And we have many friends in common that have gone through like very similar journeys. And I feel like that's kind of the seat that I have, which is to steer a little bit. And for you, I remember the first time we actually physically met, being kind of taken aback with a little bit like of how kind of fearful you were. And then sort of the relief of like, okay, this is going to be okay. Like someone's going to kind of get me through this, whatever it is. Because we had really candid conversations around like, this is tough and complicated. And like, I'm not sure we're going to figure it out together. And I just remember thinking, God, okay, she's going to be okay. Like we're going to do this. It's going to be okay. But that I was like taken, I was like, oh, okay. She's scared.
It's interesting you say that because even how I talk about the situation now and how I can emotionally handle it is so much different since I met you.
Really? Oh my God. I feel really humbled by that.
It's like, honestly, since I decided that I was going to use a surrogate and since meeting you, the whole aura around this conversation and around this issue in my life has completely changed. Like before, I feel like every single day I was thinking about the future. Is this going to happen? Is this not going to happen? And it was just like, I wasn't able to enjoy my present. And there was something about meeting you and just knowing that whatever was meant to be will be, and that you would do your best and most to make this happen, that like it just made me so much more grateful for my current reality. And I was able to release it a little bit. I was able to like release the anxiety a little bit.
That's incredible.
Which I feel like for you, like it's so much for you to take on, like you were saying before, everyone's emotional journey through this, and then also have to be honest and say the hard stuff. How do you cope with that personally?
God, honestly, it's like day by day, week by week. So, and having to do with like other factors. But I think I think medicine is at its best when you can still have real empathy. And sometimes that means you're a little too close and you bring it home. But in our world in fertility, you have to like always have that sort of sickness, if you will, where like I am broken when someone is broken. And I think knowing that and knowing that a doctor feels that way is critical, but also there's a little bit of space where I have to know like, okay, but they don't need me to be their friend.
Right.
Even if you are friends, they need you to like be their advocate and show them like the way through. And so I think I always try to be very transparent with my patients. And sometimes that's not the easiest because it also and begets a level of understanding that not everyone necessarily has, which is I think a lot of people just want doctors to fix it. And it's really scary when a doctor says, hey, this is what I know and this is what I don't know and this is what I can help with and what I can't help with and we're going to figure it out together. Some people respond so well to that and others are like, what do you mean? And then they'll hop to somebody, and you kind of have this experience. You hop to somebody who pretends that like they can fix everything. They found something new.
Right.
And you're like, what?
Wait,
like,
what?
No, what?
No.
Like, how all of a sudden did this happen?
Completely.
So some days I do it really well and other days I cry in my office, to be honest. Like you just
have to release it.
And I try my best to not do it in front of patients. Like my team will tell you that like we'll break, each of us. But most days, like, we're okay and things are good. But there are some weeks where
it's just
every
really,
day
really
feels like
painful.
it's a different slap in the face of something that's happened to somebody that you didn't anticipate and couldn't control. And there's a level of responsibility in like what I do.
Completely.
And even though I know and I give myself grace and know I can't fix everything, it is hard when you feel like you are responsible for that. Even if you've been as honest as you could be about what could happen.
Completely.
You never really want the worst thing to happen.
No, you still are always like, that's not going to happen.
You're like,
I'm
that
not going to stop
be.
until it happens.
Yeah.
So was there any part of my journey that had like surprised you or was specifically challenging?
Okay.
I know it's like you also have so many journeys. I don't know how you keep them all straight.
That. It's the part that I think was challenging for me was I felt so excited and happy about like your response to stimulation, that it was okay, that your numbers, between years hadn't changed that much. It was so exciting.
We got so many eggs.
We got so
like
many
21 eggs,
which was like the same as the years before.
Yes.
And you got a lot of embryos. And I think I remember being on vacation. Remember when I called you?
Yes.
And like the gut punch, I was like, oh my God, we won. And then we didn't have that many that were chromosomally balanced.
Completely.
And it was like, you just like break. You're like, how can that be? We did everything's like, this is, and I know.
Yeah.
It's age, all of these things, but you're still, you want to win until the very end. So I think for me, that was like a, oh no, kind of feeling. I'm sure it was for you too.
A little bit. I mean, in my head, I had this magic number that I was going to get 3 for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't even know why, but I then was trying to keep it in perspective, and I've had friends go in and they don't get anything out of it. And like that, what do you say?
It's crushing. I mean, and because it's a lot of what I say, it always feels like I'm blaming the patient. And I know that because the answer is typically when embryos are abnormal, it's because the eggs have started with an inaccurate amount of information. So then they become an embryo, usually at lower rates, which is why, again, for us, I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, such high conversion.
Right.
But then ultimately the testing is going to show that there's been a mistake made really early on. Yeah. And that's an embryo you don't typically want to use because it doesn't usually turn into a healthy pregnancy or really ever.
Right.
So when I have a conversation and say it's usually an age-based egg quality issue, I really try to make that as soft as possible because I think women in general always blame ourselves.
Completely.
We're always, all the time.
Right. We've been watching the clock since 20 years old.
Yeah, and anything that we do is like, I field every day, people who have losses in particular are like, is it because I did this or that? Really smart, like women who know the answer still have so much doubt. And then the worst thing in the world for me is like the internet and Reddit and like all of these places where really well-meaning, I think, well-intentioned women are sharing their stories to say, this is my experience, but we can't extrapolate it. And I think it's doing, in my opinion, like a disservice to a lot of people who are saying, but this woman said this happened and the same thing happened to me. It must mean something.
Completely.
So that's hard for me too. Like,
that with this whole fertility thing, it's hard. I mean, these conversations are so important because there's certain things that everybody can do, obviously, but we're all such unique beings that are going to react to everything differently. So it's like, it's hard. You can't really tell people what to do. Like what I did, I remember when we were having this conversation and you brought up like, you may not want to say the number of the eggs that I got because it's like, then all of a sudden there's like this comparison or she got that many and now maybe I can expect that many. Yeah. And like, cause she's almost 40 years old. And then there's just like all this comparing that we don't need to do.
No, but to that end, and I really mean this, it is incredible that you are so transparent about this stuff. I think the world of fertility is still shrouded in so much shame, and people what they share is like the final and like the rainbow, and not the sort of like slog through it. And I think everyone imagines that if things end up great, that it's because they were great the whole time, and all of us kind of forget every time we fall on our face, right?
Completely.
And I think it's really important to like be very authentic about all of this because then millions of people are going to understand that like what they're going through, one, it's going to be okay. And two, it's shared. It's not that like beautiful influencers. Like, and look at this baby I have now.
Like,
and there's no conversation about like
the whole journey.
What it took to get here.
Completely. I mean, people want to hear it all the time, and I have to set that boundary because I can't talk about it all the time.
Absolutely.
Like, I just went on this other podcast and cried the entire podcast and was like, I can't. I even came in today and was like, I can't do that today.
I'm going to cry today. I'm like, I'm so tired. I'm going to start to cry today. I'm 100% going to cry in your podcast.
But I have had to set boundaries with that. And the podcast has been the place where I'll talk about it because I feel like I can talk about it with a lot of time and a lot of emotion and can tell the full story. And there can be a lot of context as opposed to these little snippets and things online. Yeah. And I think it's important to share the story, but I also, you have to do it. Like you said, you can't hold anything back if you're going to do it.
Right.
Even the surrogacy thing. I mean, right.
No, but you don't at the same time.
Even the surrogacy thing. Yeah. You
don't owe anybody anything.
That's true.
Please,
that's true. That's true. But like, I was really nervous at the beginning to even admit that I was going to do that just because I felt like I hadn't done everything that I could possibly do to get pregnant myself. Like
what?
I hadn't ever actually done the transfer. Before I was about to do the transfer, I got super sick, remember? And then I lost all this weight and just physically it was just not going to happen for me. And so then the surrogate, like I decided to do surrogate. And so I just have always felt this guilt, like people are going to be like, well, you never actually tried. And it's like, it's sick that we do that to ourselves.
And also like you went through a lot before you got to the point of an embryo transfer, right?
Right. Like I did. It's been now Sunny 7. It's been 6 years of on and off trying to have another baby. And so I'll tell myself that.
Yes.
But this is one of those things, our fertility journeys, while we should share them, we also we need to shut out where anybody else is at in their lives, in their journey.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, do you hear that? That's the sound of crunchy, tasty granola hitting the bowl and my day just getting instantly better. I've been starting my mornings with Purely Elizabeth, and let me just say this, it's really changing my mornings. It's become a real obsession. They have a ton of flavors to choose from, like chocolate sea salt, yum, blueberry hemp, vanilla almond butter, which is actually Sunny's favorite, and my current favorite, the original ancient grain granola. These delicious crunchy clusters are made with organic oats and ancient grains and superfood seeds like amaranth, quinoa, and chia. I love how it gives me that indulgent feeling, but with ingredients that are actually energizing and good for you. All Purely Elizabeth products are certified gluten-free, contain no artificial flavors, and they have non-GMO, vegan, and keto-friendly options too. The founder, Elizabeth, is a certified holistic nutrition counselor and health coach. So these obsession-worthy foods are made with intention, from the superfoods to the sustainably sourced ingredients. She settles for nothing short of delicious. And if you are a granola lover like me, or just a snack lover in general, you've got to try it. Taste the obsession for yourself and visit purelyelizabeth.com and use code WIT at checkout for 20% off. That's purelyelizabeth.com with code WIT at checkout. You can thank me later. Just getting into a little bit of fertility 101 and IVF.
Okay.
What are some early signs that someone may need fertility support?
So the only predictor of fertility is the presence of a regular cycle. Right. Fertility is not set by how many eggs you have. It's definitely attached to age as it gets harder as we get older, but it's not like women who are 39 can't get pregnant spontaneously. Right. So fertility, the only thing we know is you have to regularly ovulate. Mm-hmm. The challenge for a lot of women is we're preventing that forever. Mm-hmm. Right? We're taking pills, IUDs, and those are all wonderful things because the only reason we have cyclical bleeds is because it's really the brain kind of saying, hey, you failed, right? You're not pregnant. I want to reset. Okay. I'm going to shed this tissue and try again. But in the absence of wanting to get pregnant, having like a menstrual bleed is totally irrelevant, right? It's just you lose the ability to understand. And so what I say to a lot of my patients, especially my fertility preservation patients that come in and kind of ask me that question, which is, do you think I'm fertile? My answer always is, I honestly don't know. I'm not clairvoyant. And I would tell you if you need to understand that to figure out like, what do you need in terms of egg freezing or embryo freezing? Come off contraception for a period of time and see if your cycles regulate, because a huge myth out there is that birth control pills take a while to wash out. This is like one of my number one pain points.
I went off birth control with Sunny, and within a month I was pregnant. And like then struggled for 6 years. Like that's how crazy it is.
And like a good rule of thumb for anything in medicine is any medication you take daily has a short half-life. So if you have to keep on reminding your body to listen to the medicine, it doesn't hang out for a while. And so birth control pills, they're out of your body in 3 days. And sometimes maybe, therefore, it takes you like 6 weeks to get your first period. But this idea that there's like a prolonged period of time afterwards that you don't bleed is false. And I think there's a lot of misinformation on the internet about this.
Interesting.
So then when I see as a person who's been trying to get pregnant for 6 months without a period, and I was like, it's impossible. Like, you just can't do that. So predictability and regularity of cycles is key, and regular does not mean like same exact time. It's between 21 days and 35 days. So if you have periods every 48 days, I just saw a patient like this today, every 48 days she gets her period. And they've been trying for 12 months, and she's 31 years old, and she's like, what's going on? And I was like, you have subfertility. So in 12 months, you haven't had 12 shots on goal. And you don't really know when the egg is being released, because your body's kind of like stalled for a period of time, and then you're going to ovulate, but it's going to be random for you. And I feel like I honestly, and this is like a little bit silly to say, but I feel like this is like stuff we talk about all the time that everyone has to know it. And I'm always shocked when people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like all we do is talk about this.
I know. But it's like all you do is talk about this, but there's not enough voices talking about it. And also a lot of people have varying opinions.
I agree. Yes.
And so, yes.
I agree. And like this patient, because she's top of mind, was an attorney. And she came to me with sort of like outside the box testing, like no like testing that we would order. And I'm thinking like, that's interesting. That was your first like path, when like this
like
is actually
testing, like just going to CVS and buying.
No, like doing like salivary tests of like heavy metals and things like that would not be my first look, right?
For if you're fertile or not.
But it was interesting to me. I'm always fascinated on people that I consider to be like, you know, like very well informed. And I'm surprised by how they've like come to me with questions, which, you know, but so
it just goes to show you when it comes to our own bodies, how clueless we can be, which comes from, I think, also being in like a state of anxiety about fertility. Like, it's not like they're not smart and they couldn't eventually get to the right answer, but we're just like so clouded by emotion and anxiety with this whole thing. I feel like we're choosing to do things irrationally.
I agree. And I think there's something about medicine, like conventional Western medicine, that feels scary.
They're like, ignorance is bliss. I'm too afraid something's going to be wrong. And I'd rather just do everything else before. It's like a last resort.
And I wish, I don't know where that comes from. I think it's antiquated view of medicine. I really hope that we are like breaking down really that boundary between patients and seeking care. And it's not that there are many different kinds of care that are really important and can be sort of like an all-encompassing picture of how you treat a patient. But I find it constantly surprising that I'm like the last stop. And I'm thinking, gosh, like I'd like to be stop 1 or 2, and then everyone else comes around and we work together holistically, very honestly, to like solve this problem. But I find that often like MDs are like villainized. They're like, we're going to just say, oh, just do IVF and that's it. Or most of us don't, right? But if we do, it's usually because we're thinking through the problem and the solutions and giving options. But I find, especially right now in the climate, I have a lot of like justification for my recommendations that is coming from a place of like fear and distrust. I wish I understood it better, but I spend
it's just
so much time.
Also maybe because there's also too much information out there. And so now a lot of people are like, the information they're receiving is becoming higher, like is worth more to them than the traditional doctor. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like everyone's talking, everyone's reading, everyone's trying to find their own way of doing things. I think you're right about the doctor thing, but it's like, someone comes to you once they're obviously having issues with fertility. But they can also come to you obviously in their 20s if they want to do egg freezing or embryo freezing or anything like that they want to do.
And you can come before.
But you really, it's like if you're not having regular periods and you want to get pregnant, that's when to come see you.
Totally. Like that is absolutely. Or if you have some sort of inclination, like family history of something, your partner has something that you're concerned about, always good to like get the consult. You'll never regret it.
Right.
We're never gonna like throw you out of our office and like, what are you doing here? We're gonna try to, but at the same time, I'm not personally gonna do unnecessary testing. So I'm gonna kind of explain, these are the options available to us. This is like the pitfall of doing it. All fertility tests are validated in the setting of infertility. So if you do them outside of that, how we interpret them gets really challenging and gray.
Completely.
And you don't want to fearmonger. I don't want to fearmonger.
Right.
I want to say, listen, I don't know. You haven't tried. This is a red flag. Maybe don't wait 12 months, wait 6 months, right? But it's really always, and with you and me too, it's always like a conversation. I have a mentor who I love, but he used to say, it's not Burger King. You can't get it the way you want it, right? And I'm kind of like a little bit of a hybrid, which is as long as you understand everything,
right? Then
we're on the same page.
Do with that information what you choose to do. I can't force you to do anything. But that was a little bit of an issue with my last doctor, which was that lovely bedside manner, so nice. But then when it came down to making a decision, it was the opposite. It was like, well, what do you feel like doing? What do you think is the right choice? We could do this or we could do this. And Timmy and I were always so much like, just tell us what are like the best odds, you know? And Timmy always wanted to know, like, what are the odds? Give me some numbers. And it would be like, well, it can't really do that. And da-da-da-da. And he was so nice about it. But I was so excited to find someone who was more decisive, especially for someone like me. And every patient needs something different. But for me, that's what I was looking for. I am not the expert here. You are. So like I needed someone to be confident to make those choices.
And I feel like who you choose to see, and you've had this experience, it's not a one size fits all.
Right.
So like sometimes you just go to a person like everyone goes to, but it's not the right fit for you. And knowing that early on and pivoting and figuring like what you need is critical. And I always say to patients, one, I love when someone comes for a new consult and tells me they're talking to 2 more people. I'm like, perfect. 3, perfect.
Yes.
Because you're going to figure out really quickly who is going to be right for you because there are different, to your point, energies, vibes, clinics, bureaucracy. Like how do you book everything? And I said to a patient, I'm on call right now. I said to a patient last night who called me at like 6 o'clock and she's really frustrated because she's in Miami and couldn't get some paperwork done. And I was like, listen, I'm going to try to help you with this because I recognize this is such a pain point, this nuance of just getting like in order to get something done. It's not the injections. It's not the visits for her. It's like her life is busy and setting it up. She just needed like that thing. And
she needed like a doctor, executive assistant.
I'm like, I'm just going to email this to you. I'm not sure I'm supposed to. I'm just going to do it. It's going to be fine. And she was like so grateful. Like it's just this little. So I think getting a couple opinions from different people. Most fertility doctors are pretty smart and pretty great.
I know. I should have done that. That's the thing. Is like that's my biggest regret is, and I don't want to have regrets, but is that I just went with a referral, and I didn't have conversations.
But you don't, and also you don't know what you're stepping into. Like you don't know what your journey is going to be until you're in it.
Completely.
And I feel like all the time I'm stunned that like stuff didn't just work out the way I thought it would. And maybe that's you. Like maybe I'm just so arrogant.
I know.
I'm like, how did this not go the way I thought?
Completely. But that's also the hard part about the situation is everyone's like, no one talks about this or, you know, but it's like we are talking about it, but you're not seeking the information until you're actually in the problem.
Exactly.
You know?
And then you're also like, that's typically when you're like in your deepest Reddit rabbit hole. Exactly. Of like, oh my God.
We'll soak in all of the bullshit that's out there.
Yes.
So what does the first consultation with you look like?
For infertility, it's typically just talking history. I'm trying to find breadcrumbs, right? I'm trying to understand what are things I can run down and say this may be like the source. Because infertility, by definition, is 6 cycles or 12 cycles based on age of like continuous exposure to sperm at the right time and you haven't conceived. And so if you're less than 35 and you've had 12 months of this, you're in the 15% of people that it seems like it's not working out in the timeline it's supposed to. That said, it doesn't mean it's never going to work out, right? So the data also says if you try for up to 3 years, most couples are pregnant, but that feels like your eyebrow shocking, right? It's like, that doesn't make sense.
Right now it doesn't. That sounds good to me.
Oh my God. Yeah. But it's shocking, and I get that. So first we figure out, how long has it been? What are things that I can potentially already kind of sniff out and say, I think this may be it.
Yeah.
And then it's big picture test, which is always frustrating. So it's looking to make sure the sperm is there. There's enough of it. It's moving. It looks okay. And like the bars are pretty low for that. That the fallopian tubes or the tunnels are open. And like, so everything should come together.
Yeah.
And then how we think about treatment and approach is, what are the goals, right? How many children do you want? What's the timeline? And then it's really about like, what's the best fit? But in general, everything we do is trying to get more eggs and get more sperm closer together with various degrees of efficacy. But that first conversation is first also taking in the temperature. I'm a big fan of that, which is like, where are we? Are we, is this 10 out of 10 every day we're thinking about this? Is this sort of, 1 out of 10 we're passively, and
trying,
everyone's a little different. But getting a sense of that helps me figure out what's the best path.
Forward,
but in general, most of the tests are clunky. Like they're not precise, and that's why IVF, becomes like the best diagnostic test as well as treatment, because it's the only time you have the egg and the sperm and you can figure it out.
Right.
So you learn a lot from an IVF cycle, which is like, for you guys, your IVF cycle, the first one went great. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Right.
They were great. What's going on? But usually that is the conversation. And it's always like fraud. People hate to be in my office.
Yeah.
I get it. Ugh. So it's also just trying to like knock that down.
Right. And not make it such a negative experience.
No, I spend most of my consult getting to know people. I'm like, what do you do? And I'm always like, wait, how does that work? Because I don't know anything about anything. So I'm like, what does finance mean?
I know. I just told her, she was like, who's Lindsay? I'm talking to the camera as if I'm talking to someone. And I was like, my social content producer. And she's like, what is that? Like, we'll talk later.
No, we're doing great, guys.
We can teach each other, Catha.
Oh, God.
Are there any like myths or misconceptions about IVF that you always hear?
I think people are totally stunned by how like biology works, which is it sounds like that's a horrible thing to say. But like when you get your period, truly, like your brain thinks you're solely here for procreation. That's all it thinks we exist for.
I know, you said something interesting before about how it's like, shit, I'm not, your body said like, shit, I didn't do my job because I wasn't pregnant.
Yes,
like, that's crazy.
It is. Your brain is like, you failed. And it's going to then like ping your uterus, which is just a muscle, and say cramp aggressively, get rid of that stuff. And like, we got to try again. So the next message it sends is to your ovaries. And the next thing people don't realize, our ovaries don't give a shit about pregnancy. They are endocrine glands, just like your thyroid. They are making hormones that are critical for your day-to-day functionality. So they're making estrogen, they're making testosterone. These are things that are important for bone density, cardiac growth, brain, like everything.
Yeah.
And they happen to be the keepers of the eggs.
Okay.
But all they want to do is stay with you forever. So menopause is like the cessation of having eggs. And so your ovaries just dwindle and you have no hormones and you feel like crap.
Right.
So they're always going to calibrate and figure out, what can we spare so the brain has a chance, but we have enough for Whit forever, right? And forever is really decades.
Okay.
That's the idea of ovarian reserve. So you have the stockpile in those ovaries and those glands, and they're going to, in a stroke of brilliance, say, yep, I have about 10,000, but she needs me for 50 more years, and so you get 10 a cycle. Whatever that number is, and everyone's a bit different, that is the highest number of eggs I can grow. In IVF, that's it. So I can't say, hey, Catha, you have 10. I'm going to give you this drug and I'm going to grow 50. Right. It's impossible. Right. So that's why all treatments in general are more successful when we're younger, because we have more available and the egg quality is stronger. So you get more from whatever those numbers are. But people come and I think they believe IVF is this fix-all, which is a bad seat to be in, because sometimes it means you've waited a really long time to come to me and you think I can magically fix it. And that's like and I see it dawn on people when they're like, well, I thought I could take a medicine and like you could just grow a ton. And I was like, it's so limited by your body. And also, I don't know how your body's going to respond. So that, I think, is the biggest myth, that it's like this perfect fix-all. Right. There's tons of imperfections about IVF, and most of which is just like everything else. I'm in control of like this much. Right. And then, yes, sometimes you get tells throughout the way, or you have a cycle go, oh, I wish I had known this or that. And I would do it differently. But usually it's like just you're throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Right.
And because there's so much of it, you end up winning. But it's not because it's like this like finessed process.
Completely.
Which I wish it was.
Summer's right around the corner and I really can't wait. I feel like a kid at the end of the school year who can't concentrate. I'm just picturing myself in the Caribbean, somewhere warm and magical. And lately for me, that place is Aruba. I can't stop daydreaming about Aruba, probably because I keep talking about it on here and it's telling me how beautiful the beaches are. But Aruba isn't just about beautiful beaches, although they are amazingly beautiful. Eagle Beach was in fact just named TripAdvisor's best beach of 2025, if you haven't heard that yet. But that's no small feat with all the gorgeous coastlines in the world. The thing that really sets Aruba apart, though, is the soul of the island and the feeling that it brings. The locals have such a deep respect and love for their home, and they welcome visitors into that spirit of care. They say, when you love Aruba, it loves you back. With the sunniest skies in the Caribbean, warm ocean breezes, and that impossibly clear blue water, it's the kind of place that makes you exhale. So if you're like me, browsing vacation photos, thinking about where you want to go this summer, searching for somewhere that feels joyful and grounding, this just might be the sign you've been waiting for. Aruba is the perfect place to nourish your spirit, bring your family closer, and help everyone unplug from all the chaos. This vacay cannot come soon enough. Plan your next trip at aruba.com. That's aruba.com. Ever wonder why your body starts to look and feel different as you get older? You're not just getting older, your cells are exposed to stress, radiation, and external stressors that damage your DNA. This leads to reduced energy, slower recovery, brain fog, joint pain, and the breakdown of your body. Here's what's really happening. Your mitochondria, your cell's power plants, become less efficient because two essential molecules, NADH and CoQ10, decline with age. Plus, your natural collagen production plummets. That's where Strong Cell comes in. Strong Cell is designed to target the root cause of aging at the cellular level. Their patent-pending formula targets aging at its source by giving your body exactly what it's missing. NADH to fuel your mitochondria, CoQ10 to spark energy production, and marine collagen to rebuild skin, joints, and connective tissue within. Rather than merely addressing symptoms, Strong Cell works to rebuild your cellular health from within. Users report more energy, faster recovery, sharper mental clarity, and a stronger body. You can try Strong Cell risk-free for 30 days. Visit strongcell.com and use code Whitney at checkout for 20% off your order. That's strongcell.com. It's not magic, it's cellular science, and it's time to make it work for you. Reclaim your energy, rediscover your strength. Try Strong Cell today. How do you prepare patients kind of emotionally and physically before IVF?
I think this really depends on where they're at when they start.
Yeah.
Are you coming to me as a shell of yourself, right? Are you coming to me incredibly ashamed that you're here and you feel like you failed? And I see that all the time. People are so angry that they need help and real anger at themselves or at me sometimes, right? Just, oh my God. Or are we taking the bull by the horns? We're running and we're excited about this. Yes. And I always try to get us there without being too much of an awkward cheerleader about it, right? But this, we can action, right?
Yes.
We can do.
Yes.
And I feel when you're doing, you're going to solve problems. My mother would love that I said that. But so I think it's really figuring out where are we at and then giving them what they need. And for some people, that's, hey, I'm going to be with you the whole way, right? Yeah. We're going to talk about this every step of the way. You're going to see me. We're going to get it. Other people, it's I'm going to leave you alone as much as I can. I'll just call you when I need to. Everyone's a bit different, but it's getting a sense of what do they need and who do they have? Because if they don't need me, I'm hoping that means they have someone else, right? That they're being fully transparent with. And sometimes that's a mom or a parent. Sometimes that is a spouse or a partner. Yeah. Sometimes it's a best friend. It varies. And if they don't have any of that, it's us. Right. And that's where I really think having that empathy and giving skin to it is really important.
Really important. I think it makes a difference in the overall outcome too. I know that sounds
so LA of you to say that. Oh my God, honey.
I know you're gonna hate that, but I just I know like, I feel like stress infiltrates your cells. Like, I really do think stress does. And I don't know if it has anything to do with this or whatever, but I do think that, like, just having that support and knowing that you and your team, like, I also don't even want to forget about your incredible team.
Yes, like 1,000%.
That, like, also was so on it. Excuse my sexy bra. It was really a professional interview. Your team was incredible, and they treated me as if, like, I was a sister too. Like, I really got that vibe, and it was very much every night. Like, when I was doing my shots, like, are you all set up? You have everything you need, and that was so meaningful because I'm talking to them a lot.
Totally.
A lot during that whole process.
Yes. Doing shots in cars. Very stressful for me.
Doing shots in cars. Can you believe we did that?
I saw that. Okay.
Is there such a thing as too many IVF rounds?
Really debatable. So the data around that, and we think of this sort of line in the sand, about 6 cycles comes from the egg donor population. So in medicine, of course, you want to do no harm. And you definitely want to do no harm to individuals that are, like, giving you a gift, if you will, whether that's eggs or, like, a uterus. Like, you want to make sure they are protected.
Yeah.
So in that population where they're going to go through a lot of cycles to get a lot of eggs and have pretty elevated hormones, we cap it at 6 because we say, hey, at that point, you start to incur risks of not ovarian cancer, but, like, gnarly ovarian cysts that have to be followed, and we get worried about it. It's not all patients, but it's about 6. That has been extrapolated to apply to, like, every IVF patient, and that's not fair because some patients need to do 9 cycles to get 18 eggs.
Completely.
So this is all about, like, having conversations and trust with your docs, but the data is, like, from egg donors. And I always say this, and it freaks people out, the biggest risk any woman ever takes when it comes to breast, ovarian, uterine cancer is pregnancy. Because that's the highest your hormones are ever going to be for an extended period of time.
Right.
And so if you use that as a base case and just compare what we do, we have little spurts for, like, 10 to 12 days, but additive, it's not going to ever really add up to, like, a pregnancy. Right. So I take a lot of solace in that. Yeah. And I go, okay, but at some point, the challenge is to know, like, when to quit. Right. And that is fraught.
That I know. So
that is fraught.
I'm not there yet. Obviously, I'm not there yet.
Oh my God,
but
no.
Like, little personal side note. Yesterday, I got an email that we cannot move forward with our surrogate because she needs something called
a leap.
A leap.
Yep.
So here's where we're at with our journey, and we can kind of, like, discuss it and make even a plan.
We'll make a plan right here, live on a podcast.
So we obviously know I have 2 boy embryos that got transferred to you from my first round.
Yes.
And then I have the 1 embryo from the last round
with
you.
Yes.
And we have decided that we think using the latest embryo that we got is the best route.
Yes.
Remind me.
Let's go through why. Because this is a good.
It's important when choosing embryos. Because originally I had 2 girls. Yeah. And they supposedly weren't as strong as the other boys, but I really wanted a girl, so I put them in, and they didn't transfer. Right. So, the choosing of the embryos and figuring that whole situation out.
So, in general, embryos are going to grow for up to a week. So, 5, 6, 7 days, because that's how long it takes an embryo to transit from the fallopian tube to the uterus. And so everything we do in the IVF lab is trying to, like, mirror physiology. So we're checking on day 5, day 6, day 7, and trying to, the first screen, and this is where clinics are a little bit different about, like, where do they draw their lines. So there are plenty of centers that will basically, like, freeze or biopsy everything because they're like, what do we know? Let's try. And then there are centers like Spring, very candidly, where that initial screen is pretty critical. And we're going to look at it and say, do we think this embryo has the reproductive potential to be a healthy embryo and to then become an implantation? And so I feel like once you pass that test, I'm usually, like, pretty thrilled and excited, hence, like, your IVF cycle, right? But how we choose which embryos pass that screen have to do with the size of the embryo and then the cells within it, and are the cells kind of segregated into what becomes the placenta and the fetus. And then, like, It's a beauty contest. Like, how clear are they? Are they fragmented? And you grade them. Mm-hmm. And then any embryo that seems like it was going to pass muster, you try. And you say, okay, if you're electing to do genetic testing, which you don't have to do, but a lot of clinics do it and recommend it. We test, embryos are hundreds of cells. You'll test like 4 to 7 of those cells, freeze the embryo, as many as have met your criteria. And then the genetic testing comes back and you kind of overlay that. So your embryos from your first cycle, you had a good number of them. You had some that were well graded and some that weren't well graded.
Yeah.
And the outcomes of 2 of those transfers were not great, right? And whenever you have embryos that are screened and they don't result in healthy pregnancies or even further like losses, you're kind of scratching your head and you're going, again, variables you can change. Like, so this cohort of embryos doesn't seem to be doing the trick. Right? We transferred 2 that were chromosomally balanced to a uterus that was optimized, and we don't have a baby. And so what's the first thing we can do? We can change the embryos, right? And so you can do that by changing the egg source, the sperm source, or the lab, right?
Right.
Typically, most
we
people
couldn't choose. We did. I mean, luckily, we were able to keep our egg and our sperm.
Yes, but these are like, those are the variables, and so most people like you guys are like, what? Like, we'll change the lab. Reasonable, okay? Reasonable.
We can do that.
Reasonable. And so then we did that. We got where we're at, and we had like a serious talk about the embryo we have is older, right? Because you're older,
right?
The grade is fine. The chromosomes are fine, but it's like on paper, not as good as the other 2 you have. And we're like, okay, so what do we do? Because it seems like this is a new cohort and crop. It seems like this should be our better bet. But does it feel better, safer to use the embryos that are higher graded? And we went around on this. And I told you, it feels like a maverick move to tell you to use the older embryo. But I think we should, because the embryos from the first cohort didn't work. And they didn't just not work. Like, they failed. Like, they implanted and then they didn't continue. And so there are different kinds of embryo transfers. Like, failure is too harsh of a word, but like non-successes. Do you know what I mean? Like,
but she did also, and I know you know this, and we talked about the blood clot too that our surrogate had.
Yeah.
And so we don't know if that could have played a part as well. But for me, it just I felt more comfortable putting in the one that you harvested.
No, I agree with you. But that also begets, like, we'll talk about surrogacy. When I think I talked to you guys when you were about to do a pretty extensive evaluation on your carrier. And I was like, hold. Why are you guys going to do this evaluation on this carrier when she's basically had like the same history as you?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing?
Right.
And you're like, what do you mean? And I was like, the whole purpose here is you're trying to optimize. And if it's not optimal, you have to pivot knowing like how fraught that is. And that goes like the journey is. And every time you have to like start over, it drags.
I know, it drags, and it brings you back to that initial grief of just like, I'm back here again.
Yes.
And so we had that yesterday. Yes. So our surrogate is no longer a candidate because she has to get something called the LEAP procedure.
Yeah. So everyone has to have routine screens, just like and she had a pap smear, which everyone needs, and she needed one. And the pap smear, like, inexplicably came back as needing more intervention. And
is that something that she has to get regardless of trying to get pregnant?
Yes.
So she.
Yes.
Okay.
So PSA on pap smears is they are trying to pick up early signs of cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is a slow-growing cancer. Yeah. But it is gnarly when you have it. Yeah. And so the reason that women get screened anywhere between 6 months and 5 years, depending on like the results of the pap smear, is because we're trying to like anticipate when the cervical cells start to transition.
Right.
And so what a LEAP is essentially we're saying that the end of the cervix, like the last line of defense, is breaking down a little bit. And so the way we fix it in medicine, of course, is we chop it off. And we say, fine, we're going to remove that piece of it and give you a fresh start. But from a pregnancy perspective, especially for a carrier, one, you need time to heal. You need at least 6 months. And two, that's a situation that can put you at increased risk of things like preterm delivery. And, you know, so it's just.
I felt that, honestly, like at first when I got the email, I felt bad for myself.
Yeah.
And
good.
I was like, and then I was like, I feel so bad for her.
I know.
She has 2 kids, and I know like so many of these surrogates, I feel like at least the many that I've spoken to are single parents that are trying to make extra money for their families. And I was like, and now she can't do this. And like, maybe she'll get the procedure and she can do it. But it's just like, it can all be a bummer. But then luckily I have someone like Shelly who you introduced me to, who is, I'm like, why am I blanking on her company name right now?
Oh my God, I don't know what either. But I love you, Shelly Marsh. I don't know.
I know, Shelly Marsh.
Surrogacy. I'm going to make it up. I'm
gonna say it. I'll put it in.
I don't know.
But she immediately emailed me and was like, I already have 3 new candidates for you. And that was also someone that you introduced me to. Yeah. And that's the other thing about working with Spring, I feel like, is also the network that you guys have. Like beyond just you, like I was saying, your team and then the network and the people that can facilitate this beyond what you can do. But Shelly, who will help us find our new surrogate, has been amazing. And like, talk me through the process. So we find a surrogate and then she comes to see you for an initial screening. And then what?
So first we find a surrogate or carrier and I get the medical records. Yeah. And I look through them and I figure, are there any flags? And the benefit of someone like Shelly, and there are other kind of agencies similar to her, is that usually when they're showing me somebody, like, we're vetted, right? Like we're there. Yeah. So I will look and say, yep, agree, like we're golden. Or sometimes I'll flag and say things like, she needs a pap smear. Mm-hmm. Can we like run this down before we sign legal contracts or make payment? Which is this case, right? Yeah. But so first I'm looking at records, and criteria is really that like there have been healthy deliveries, full-term deliveries, no history of like smoking, no recurrent losses, kind of like things you would think. Yeah. And then once we pass that, then yes, I'm going to physically evaluate them. And I'm going to make sure that when I see them, I feel like, okay, they are as they represent themselves. And then we do like a uterine evaluation to make sure that initial screen, a catheter can get in the uterus and like no problems there. And then the cavity itself appears like it could have a healthy implantation and gestation. So once we check those 2 boxes off, and depending on where your clinic is and when your carrier is, that's like an expense already, right? You're flying someone. Exactly. Also goes to the network. I fully trust our team on the West Coast, and I can say, hey, is it easier to go to Portland? Is it easier to go to like San Francisco? Whatever. I'll see everything. You don't have to send them to me in New York, right? Okay. But so that happens. And then once I say, yep, looks good, I typically call you guys and say, oh, looks good. And then happens like the legal part of it and the contracting and like we call like the psych screens, which is to make sure that everyone's on the same page with what's going to go on here. Because it's a really challenging process.
It can be. I felt like the legal part was the easiest part of the whole thing.
Really?
It was just like, I don't know.
That's because you guys are like, you and Timmy are pretty chill. I feel like some people, it's really hard.
I get it. And I don't have control issues. So like,
there's a problem with that. You can have control issues.
Yeah. Like I've already been pregnant. Yeah. So I feel very lucky in that I've had that experience. Yeah. And I also, it's not like I treated my body that great, but like I was eating crap every day, like whatever I wanted. I mean, I was taking care of myself and I wasn't smoking, I wasn't drinking, but like, I don't want to stress the person out more than they are. I just want to choose someone that I feel like I can trust to do it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Of course. But that is like a very healthy perspective.
Right. That's why I feel like I'm a good candidate.
You are. And that's why you're like a hot commodity. Everyone's like, yes, I want to be your carrier. But there are plenty of people that are like, I want them to be like interned in my house.
Yes, completely. Like monitor every single thing they eat and all. I can't.
It's also more, I mean, it gets more expensive also, guys. But that's also like, that's tough. That's like not a trust thing. Right. That's like you're just using someone to be like your vessel and you want to. And everyone comes at this a different way, but I find that really hard. And that then speaks to the mental health piece of it, which is like having to let go a little bit. And this is the hardest thing to let go of. I also ate like crap during my pregnancy.
I know. Like, we'll see once if God willing, she gets pregnant. Yes. Let's see how intense I get.
You're going to be fine.
You never know. You're going to be fine. I could all of a sudden turn into like this type A control freak.
0% chance of this. 0% chance. Once she's 16 weeks, you're going to be like, no, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm fine. I'm totally fine.
Me in like 6 months.
Yes, like just let me know when you're ready.
Just call me when your water breaks.
That's gonna be great. Oh my God. I can't wait for that.
So then the contract, and then will you do a mock cycle? Because I've been meaning to talk to you about this.
It's a good question. Yeah. It typically not if someone has like irregular ovulatory cycles, we've done their evaluation at a point where I can kind of see their lining, or I'll just look at their lining in a regular cycle. There's nothing wrong with a mock cycle. It just seems to like add more, and it depends on like your risk tolerance level. So the safest strategy is, yes, do a mock cycle. With that comes more inconvenience for the carrier, more cost for you guys. And it would be suggesting that like, I'm worried about the lining. And if I'm worried about the lining, we're not doing this, right? So typically that is not something that we routinely do.
Good. That's
Can you? Of course. Like, of course. Can you do all of the uterine testing? Like, endometrial biopsies, and but usually like the whole purpose of this is that you're optimizing that. And there are doctors that feel differently about this, and they do everything possible. For me, that approach to medicine, one, is invalidated, and two, just begets all these problems that I can't solve because they're not real problems yet. So no, but we always do what's called a program cycle, and most clinics do that, which is there is no like natural cycle, modified natural cycle. It's taking estrogen patches or pills and then progesterone shots. And I only call that out because there's a lot of data around embryo transfers, and that modified natural, as in like your body creating a follicle and ovulating that and having your own progesterone, has better obstetrical outcomes. And so lower risks of preterm delivery, high blood pressure in pregnancy, and gestational diabetes. And so there's benefits to that. So my patients that are autologous, that are carrying their own pregnancies, that's usually my go-to protocol. My carriers, I can't run the risk of them ovulating and having their own conception, hypothetically, and not knowing. So oh my God, I know. And obviously everyone use protection and signs all these things, and like I just can't sleep at night.
Humans.
So I'm like, nope, that's not going to be a possibility. I'm going to shut it down before and just ensure that like the only embryo getting there is embryo I'm putting in. But this approach can be criticized because, I know that modified naturals have better obstetrical outcomes, but like in this population, not worth the risk.
So will she do then the transfer in the same place that I did my egg retrieval?
In the room next door.
That was a fun day. After, like, I remember.
Fun.
I mean, it's just like because I love drugs. I remember waking up. Remember I called you, I think, and I was like, we need to bottle whatever your anesthesiologist is putting in his meds because my skin has never looked better. And you were like, Whitney, it's called rest.
It's true. But it is also where his name is Neil. And I was like, we can just do naps with Neil. Like, let's just do it. I say that all the time.
Good.
I requested one today. I got the neg. Okay. But I was like, I would love a little purple on that for 10 minutes. Be great.
So good. But that's comforting to me. Like, I like the idea that I've been in there. I've had the procedure. Like, I know where she's going to be. So then she'll do the transfer here, but then will you see her again ever?
It kind of depends on you guys, right? My general preference is to do the first pregnancy scan. Because I like to be like the bearer of that news, which is, hey, we're golden, I'm calling you, we're great, or you're on the phone or whatever, or it's not, and I want to be able to manage it quickly. This doesn't apply as much if the carriers are in states where I'm not worried about the new laws. A lot of carriers live in states that have very complicated reproductive laws right now. So I am basically suggesting to my patients that they put in their contract and they understand they're going to be incurring a fee to fly the carriers to me. So if you're in Florida, if you're in Texas, like you are coming to me for that first ultrasound so that I can ensure that like you are safe. If it's in California or Oregon, it's kind of up to you guys. And I will probably, because it would be at like spring there, I would just like be on the phone with the doctor in the room. Do you know what I mean?
Like telling him what
because
to do.
it feels like unfair to say like, please fly her to me. But in general, it's that this is one of those things where it's sort of like a conversation, right? I don't ever, I'm sure I was going to do, this is such an expensive process. The last thing I want to do is like tick up little things that are nices, but not necessaries.
Completely.
You know what I mean?
Completely.
Are you guys going to be at the transfer?
We didn't go to the transfers the last time because I just didn't feel, I don't know. And like we were in Los Angeles too.
Were you invited to?
Yeah, we were invited and she said it was fine, but I felt like it was so clinical.
Interesting.
That I didn't want to like make even her feel uncomfortable. And I just didn't feel the need to be there.
Were you there for any of the scans, like the subsequent scans?
And then the subsequent scans were all in Nevada. Were all where she was in Nevada. So, and then I ended up meeting her. There was one scan that I met her. I think I'm blanking on all of it now. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't have a strong opinion about it for some reason.
But like, fine.
Like, I could tell with this last surrogate, she sort of didn't want us there. And I'm like, I'll be honest, I'm sort of relieved this one didn't work out.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. I don't know why.
But
I can't tell you, but there's...
But I remember you texted me and I was like, I can't talk about this right now.
I know. I told you,
but I can call you later.
I said remember, she didn't laugh at Timmy's joke.
Yes. You're like, I just have this sense. How do I know? And I was like, oh shit. I'm like, I want to talk about this, but I can't talk about this right now.
I know. She like didn't get
good and bad of having like in text contact. I'm like, this is important.
Well, that's the other thing. I'm like, I hope, do you text with everybody?
I text with a lot of, and this is probably a boundary issue. I text with a lot of my patients that I either feel like I am not seeing enough for various different reasons, or I want them to have that kind of access because I think they need it, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But no, not every single patient wants it or needs it.
Yeah.
But I do feel like sometimes it then is like a challenge because I can't respond the way that I would if it was like an official communication, if that makes sense.
Right. And people send a text and like people expect text. But for you, I never, I was always like, I mean, you're very...
But that one I remember, I was like, oh shit, I really want to talk to you about this. Yeah. And like, I can't get through this day. And then, but I remember that you were like, I'm not 100% sold. What do I do?
Yeah.
And that's like...
And then we thought about it for a week and then we were like, you know what? She's not going to be my best friend. I don't. And it's okay if she doesn't get Timmy's humor. And then it's just like, it wasn't meant to be.
Did that upset you or Timmy more?
Honestly, me.
Yeah, I love it.
Timmy was like, she was nervous. It's fine. It was me. I get protective over him.
I know.
I'm like, if people aren't as obsessed with him as I am, it's a problem. Okay. So quickly, cost stuff. I know surrogacy is a whole different thing. I mean, for us, the surrogacy charges can range from just their base fees of like $50 to $80, and then on top of that, obviously, is the doctors and the lawyers, and it can end up being like around $120-ish when it all said and done. I mean, I feel like that's what this journey will. I mean, who knows? Like,
and it can be more. Like, because you guys are.
We've already done 2 other things, so it is more. But like for one journey, that's like what I would say is kind of the going number right now. Is that what you?
Yeah, I think that's about right. And I think it depends on what agency you work with, completely, and then what your like criteria.
Yeah, like our last surrogate was more expensive because she had been a surrogate before, so there's like a premium for that. This one hadn't been. So there's all these sorts of crazy things.
And also like how much communication you want.
Yes,
if you want sort of visibility into like diet, exercise, vitamins, things like that.
All that,
no, it's really fraught. And then like the insurance piece of it, getting them healthcare if they need it.
But Spring helps facilitate
all
that.
Because it's, as we said earlier, like the bureaucracy of the fertility stuff, I find to be the hardest part.
Yeah.
About everything, right? Like you just want someone to like do it,
give it to you straight,
and take it,
yeah,
and then like come back to you with like a solved problem.
Completely.
So we get that, and we try our best to accommodate that, and sort of only raise flags where we're not really sure what to do, honestly. But it's so much, and it's a long process.
Yeah, it's a really long process.
Even like for you guys, you did it fast, and it was slow.
I know.
Yeah.
We did the egg retrieval last August.
I can't believe that.
And now it's May, and we found the surrogate a couple months ago, I would say.
Yeah, and that's like for
that's
people probably who know this, that is fast.
I was shocked how people when I first started thinking about a surrogate, I remember someone telling me to expect to wait like 6 months to a year to find someone.
Yeah, and it absolutely can, and that's where like. This is just, it's all a really hard thing.
To someone who's starting their journey and feels overwhelmed, what would you say to them?
Oh, know that that's a really common feeling, to just take a big, deep breath and know that like you'll find the right path, and really it's always going to be okay. And I can really say that. It might not be like, what's that meme now? It might not be plan A, but it will be like, you'll get there.
Yeah.
And that, we talked about that, like that's real. And I think a lot of people's emotions are like fear. It's like you thought it was going to go one way, and there's like a huge pivot, and what do we do?
Completely.
So take a breath and then do a little bit of research, but not too much research.
Right.
And research into like, who are you going to like seek to guide you, not necessarily these like tinctures,
completely,
if you will. Right?
I think that has been the most important thing is like, and I tell this to people who are also pregnant and like about to become moms, like find your one person or your one friend or just like your little small army of people that you really trust, because as soon as you open it up to everyone, that's when you start to get confused and you like lose that connection with your gut. Yeah. So it's just like finding your team, finding your Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. Okay. And where can people learn more or connect with you?
Oh God, when I'm bad at this. Hi. I work at Spring Fertility. I work at Spring Fertility in New York. That's where you can find me.
Yeah, that's where
I'm going to try to do Instagram stuff. I don't do it. I'm terrible at it.
You don't have to. You don't. You do enough. I'm going to let you go. Okay. I love you so much. No,
thank you for doing this.
Of course. We're good. Thank you so much.